The story of Genesis is a following of the half of the house of David that were not allowed in the garden. The First Testament of the Bible, in fact the whole Bible, is a history of this Jewish race. If read with this understanding, it would become clear. Those who have no Jewish blood in their veins are actually following the laws and commandments given the Jewish race because of the experiments the Space Brothers wanted to conduct. The experimental garden was helping. The huge animals had already been taken care of before the restructuring, so there were no longer any large animals. The spacemen introduced fire and the wheel. Fire was an awesome thing to men at this time. They were, of course, frightened by it and held it in awe and fell down and worshipped it when they saw it. It would literally incapacitate them until finally, through many hundreds of years, they learned to use it. Try to picture teaching a cat nowadays not to be afraid of fire. The period of low tide on the Red Sea was a time of drought and famine in Egypt. The crops wouldn't grow, the waters dried up in the sea, and the fish lay dead and stinking on the shores, causing disease. Many tried to eat the dead fish because they were starving. They became ill and died. It was truly a time of terrible trials in the land. The spacemen knew that they had to get the people to greener pastures, the biblical 23rd Psalm. They convinced the people that they would be better off in the land known as Sinai because of its fertile valleys where the new crops could be grown more easily. They knew that they could never get the people into the spaceships because of fear. They decided to guide them with smaller ships that are stored under the big motherships, similar to lifeboats on ocean-going vessels. They led the people there at night using lights which the men thought were fire. When they came to the Red Sea, the water was at an all-time low, and there was a sandy bar 3/4 of the way across. The spacemen sandbagged, so to speak, the rest of the way, so that the people could walk the whole distance across. By sandbagging, I mean just that. The use of some bags filled with sand was enough to dry up a ridge through the center for the people to cross, the biblical parting of the Red Sea. Once on the other side, they were left again with adequate seed for planting to fend for themselves. They had to learn to stand on their own. Remember, the help came from Venus on this 6th day, and these spacemen eventually pulled out from the garden. They had found a leader for these people, biblical Moses, but like a wise parent, the spacemen knew that they had to let this child grow and learn and discover and do or not do things on his own. They couldn't stand over him and give him orders constantly, saying this is not right and that is not right and so on. These children had to experience and experiment by themselves. So the spacemen decided to pull away and see what would happen. When they left, they knew they would be gone for a long period of time. This is when they left orders or guidelines for Moses to help his people, the biblical 10 Commandments. They were universal laws worded in a more simplistic manner. When the ships left, they did not return for 300 years, during which time Moses and his people faced all sorts of problems from nature. Some they brought on themselves by not treating the land with respect. Planting the same crops over and over in a field depleted the nutrients in the ground. Some they had no control over, such as a locust. There was one piece of knowledge that would most likely help humanity in their understanding of our origins. This knowledge is the fact that the captain, the biblical Lord, referred to in these early books, was not the same captain as the one in later books. This first captain did what he had to do in the beginning to follow up on the experiments of the artificial inseminations with genes from his planet. He did this in a firm, loving, and kind way in the beginning. But then it went to the point where he enjoyed making these poor folk cringe and bow down before him. This first captain misused his powers as far as having complete control over these people. He was removed as captain of the fleet, and the Space Fathers reappeared with a new captain in charge. Of course, the poor simple folk did not realize the difference between the first captain and the second, because there was a long period of time before a return was made. The people feared this new captain because of the stories and tales passed down about the first captain. The new captain tried to change the image the people had of the one they called their Lord. He tried to change this into an image of a loving father. He's been trying ever since to undo the harm to the people of his planet caused by the first captain toward the end of his mission. I believe this piece of knowledge can help unravel some of the discrepancies passed down through history. The new captain of of the fleet, the biblical Lord, made several appearances at that time. He did glow with light. He glowed as we today cannot glow, partly because of the pure atmosphere then, combined with his electromagnetic field, his energy. Also, he amplified his voice, biblical references to the Lord speaking. This was done by an electronic encoder that transformed the language of the captain, the biblical Lord, into the speaking language of the people, who at that time also used a partial sign language. Another new captain of the spaceship will arrive soon to change the image of the last captain of the ship, the biblical Jesus. This last captain, Jesus, wanted to come down and walk the land with these people who were the results of his forefathers' experiments. He felt that they had not been given enough help at that time. The whole experiment was similar to breeding a superior strain of horse or other animal that is done now. It is still going on. Other planets bred other races. There were more experimenters coming in from other planets, artificially inseminating other tribes of the same two-legged animals that those from Venus were experimenting with. The American Indians were evolved at the same time as the experiments in Israel, only by ships from the planet Sirian. Thus the red-skinned race, as this was the color of those from Sirian. The other races were also evolved at the same time from ships from other planets. It was a well-planned experiment, but went awry in one sense of the word, as there were to be 7 experimental spots on the planet at the same time. Only 5 of them responded. Life started at these 5 preordained spots on the landmass. There is a gap in where the other 2 brothers did not respond to the plan. Life in these 2 areas, present-day Antarctica and Africa, did not evolve as fast due to lack of insemination experiments in the early stages from the 2 brothers who did not respond. They were helped in later experiments, but are behind in evolution. This help came from the same planets, Pluto and Orion, that helped before, thus the black Atlantean and the black African, and the yellow Chinese and the yellow Eskimos. Therefore we have the brown race, if you care to call it that, the red, the yellow, and all shades in between. It takes an intelligent, reasoning mind to follow the intricate thread woven through the pattern of life. Try to visualize a floor-to-ceiling woven hanging. Starting from the floor, we find a struggle in the mineral kingdom of crumbling rocks and wind-driven grains of sand. This bottom layer of the weaving won't have much variety of color in it, but will be beautiful in its own way, with subtle shades of grays and tans and brown and black, and varying degrees of the whiter water woven throughout in a churning, shifting pattern. Water is the life-giving ingredient for the incubation period in all kingdoms. As this mating with water takes place, the delicate colors of the botanical kingdom will begin to be interwoven with the grays and browns of the mineral kingdom. The blending in of the delicate shades of green from the botanical kingdom will then be accompanied by all colors of the rainbow as the flowers take form and bloom. Our tapestry takes on great beauty when the patterns and movements of the botanical kingdom are added to the patterns and movements of the mineral kingdom. There is constant movement and conflict wherever atoms are present. These atoms can be pictured as hyperactive because they are constantly in motion. When once again the mating with water takes place, this time with the botanical kingdom, which has absorbed some of the mineral kingdom, conception takes place, and a new form of this atom, this hyperactive molecule, is found in the biological kingdom. A very slow start is made with a single-cell atom forming a single-cell amoeba, the simplest form of animal life. When this mating is accomplished, the tapestry weaving begins to settle into a more stable pattern. The wildly flowing lines of the mineral and botanical kingdoms settle down as they are absorbed into the biological form of the hyperactive atom. The tapestry now begins to change patterns over a much slower time span, as the one-cell amoeba developed into as great a number of species as did the botanical kingdom. The many varieties of biological life forms came about because of the variations of each previous kingdom being absorbed into the following kingdom and multiplying the beauty, talents, uses, and abilities of the following kingdom. The biological kingdom now composes a large area of our floor-to-ceiling tapestry. Then enters a shower of fire as the Creator God released his divine sparks, bringing about the true beginnings of human. The fire shower is when the tapestry really comes alive. The coloring of the forms that mate with this fire become more beautiful. As the fire showers continue, the tapestry is now becoming very beautiful indeed. It still will not be complete until the weaving in of spirit is accomplished. Then the tapestry will be ethereal. The shower of sparks continue coming to earth, and those sparks who have progressed enough must leave earth and return to the lightning bolt, the oversoul, that is still waiting in the upper planes for all the sparks to return so it can move on to the next planet. All is constantly in motion. When will it all stop, all end? I know not the answer to this, only to say that it will not, it cannot. This is evolution. Reincarnation could be compared to flowers. Those that must be replanted each year are less highly evolved than the perennials that die in the fall, go back into the black hole, the ground, rejuvenate, and store in the seed that energy needed to bloom again the next spring. The process for humans is exactly the same. At death, you will be in the ethereal body until your next term to come back out of the black hole into the physical form. It is very difficult to understand the collapsing and the expanding and exploding of these black holes, wherein lies the total secret of beingness. Reincarnation can be compared to farmers' crops. Seeds are planted, causing them to grow, but if they aren't properly cared for, they die. The weeds choke them out. The next springtime, the farmer plants again and knows what not to do this time. They grow better, but there are still lessons to be learned to improve the crop each spring. In winter, between incarnations, the farmer ponders over what went wrong the previous time he planted. He figures out a way to keep it from happening the next time so crops will grow better. If a crop, say for instance corn, is planted in the same field where it was diseased the previous year, then it will almost certainly get the same disease again. The same is true of humans. If they re-enter Earth in the same locality as before, the energy of their thoughts and attitudes are in the ground and will attract them to the same attitudes they had in previous lives. To help understand why reincarnation is the only logical way to structure the universe, I would like for you to pretend that you are the creator. As the creator God, you have this beautiful world down there, and you people it with your children. They need to have lesson after lesson to understand what it is you want them to learn. Would you educate your child with 1 month in the first grade and call it education? That is what the equivalent of what one life on the earth plane would be. As the creator God above the little world, you can see that one lifetime has hardly scratched the surface of the experiences your children need to have. Now, are you going to create new children each time one died? Are you going to say, too bad, little one, you really didn't learn all you needed to learn and all that I wanted you to learn. You blew it. Sorry, but that was your only chance. Yes, you realize now how you could have done it differently. You're much wiser now and would really like to try again, but sorry, I've just created a new spirit, and it's his turn now. You'll just have to go to the heaven that I've set aside for you as a final resting place for dead spirits. You'll never get another chance, but don't feel bad. Nothing more will ever be demanded of you or asked of you. You have no more worries or responsibilities. So just go to your heaven and lie around. Is this what you would do if you were the creator God? If you became attached to the spirits and really learned to love them, would you continually bring into creation new spirits and condemn the first to death? Even though you were learning yourself by watching them struggle, don't you think you would be inclined to let them try again? After all, they did promise to do better the next time, and they really do deserve another chance. That way, you don't have to keep creating new ones all the time. Let's keep the original a while longer and see what they can really accomplish if they have more chances. Wouldn't letting this growth take place give you greater satisfaction than just creating new spirits, letting them have only one chance to see what they could do, and then creating more? What are you going to do with all those dead spirits filling up spirit heaven? You're going to have a disposal problem eventually. You can't just keep moving more in there. It's already overflowing. You, in your let's pretend role of creator God, soon begin to realize that reincarnation is the logical, sensible, compassionate way to run your little world. If you had to structure the way the education of the human race was handled, You might just come up with the same answer that the Creator God did, reincarnation. You see, the divine spark can be compared to an actor. The same spark returns each lifetime, trying again as a different personality. The old personality moves on up the inner planes of earth, learning by watching and studying. It would be as an actor playing, creating actually many different roles, and keeping these roles in his memory bank until he had performed 144 different characters. The experiences that each character went through as the actor played the role influences the actor's performance of the next role, and when playing the next role, the actor can draw on something he learned as he played the previous part. These previous roles wait in the wings, backstage, watching, learning, and helping when they can until the actor has performed 144 different roles. These roles, personalities, are not dead, but neither can they get in front of the footlights again. But a part of each of them, the best traits and experiences, are embedded in the actor, the divine spark. This actor, pumped full of all the experiences and wisdom and knowledge of 144 lifetimes, then gets married. He meets his opposite half, and they blend into one unisex soul. They are called divine sparks when they are blended, reunited with the twin. Then they are called souls. With 288 lifetimes of experiences, so they are very wise. The spark joins the other half of the spark left on the inner plane, and as a whole spark, now called the soul, it does an accepting and rejecting of all its past performances. It is almost like reviewing a group of plays, wherein you were the star and deciding the best roles you played. You analyze everything, and perhaps one small line that was delivered quite eloquently from one play will be the only thing to go on the plus sheet of that play. But that is enough for that play to stay on the roster of good plays. The souls then move on up to become teachers of acting in the same school of the arts, but no longer care at this stage to be in front of the footlights again. They want to teach and train and help their younger brothers and sisters as they have their turn to perform on stage. Creation goes around in circles, thus reincarnation of all things, cells, souls, planets, solar systems, galaxies, and universes is the only possible way for it all to happen. Recirculation continues forever and ever. It never ends. The divine spark can never be destroyed. I'd like to compare reincarnation to a mouse. Picture a mouse running on the shore of a lake. He eats, sleeps, and dies on the bank of this lake. His body disintegrates, but the part of the mouse that lived on could now rise beyond what he could see and know in his environment of the area around the lake, planet Earth. Now he had traveled at times all around the lake, had even ridden across the lake on a log from side to side and end to end. There was even a tree that extended way out over the narrow part of the lake and met a tree from the other side, and he crossed the lake on this tree high above the water. But he could not climb the sheer rock cliffs that surrounded the lake and had no idea what the surrounding territory looked like. He didn't know if there were more lakes or not. He had lived numerous lives, reincarnations on Earth, always in the area around his lake. But this time, when he dies, his spirit, does not merely hover over the lake, waiting for a chance to re-enter the body of a baby mouse, reincarnate on Earth. His spirit continues to rise. It is so light and free, it rises above the sheer rock cliffs, and he finally can see the surrounding territory. It is a fantastic sight. There are more lakes, similar but somehow much more beautiful, and none of them have the sheer rock cliffs around them that had held him prisoner in one area for so long. Now that he can see and know how much more there really is, he is no longer as interested in his old lake, planet Earth. In between lives on the old lake, when hovering above waiting on the astral planes, he used his widened vision to mentally tell his brothers and sisters of food supplies at one end of the lake or other, or tell them of a branch that wasn't safe that he could see and they could not. Maybe he spotted a big cat lurking inside a cave and warned them. He did what he could, always, to help those below with his expanded knowledge if they would listen, channeling. But now that he sees the immensity of the rest of the territory, he now wanted to tell them down there in that little lake at the base of the sheer rock cliffs what he could see and what lay ahead of them all. and urged them to be better mice so they could rise up to that area where he was and see what he could see. He no longer wanted to warn them of cats and broken limbs, although he would if they asked. What he really wanted to do was move on out into that huge territory and experience all the other lakes, the higher planets. But it was hard leaving his family. He had been with them for so long and would miss them. But oh, how exciting these new places looked, and how beautiful, if only he could somehow stay in touch with his family. Then he was met by a wise old mouse who told him he could stay in touch by making contact with one special mouse, a chela or student, down on the old lake, and telling him his plans and asking him to communicate his experiences to the rest of the mice. He waited at the top of the sheer rock cliff until his contact with one special mouse was secure, and now he is moving on. He knew that he had had his last incarnation, on that lake when he continued to rise. Now he is free of the earth plane and the earth's total system and is on vacation before starting a new round of duties. He has been promoted and will no longer be in contact with as many on the earth plane, only those who go with him through their bond. There will be one taking over the work he did to help that first lake, and he will do a good job. This first mouse has other lakes to explore. The only way to experience planet Earth is to take on a body, and this must be done many, many times to progress to the next planet. Did you think the Creator was only over planet Earth? He is over the entire universe and will have much help from planets that are already sacred. The goal for each divine spark is a trip through the evolutionary cycle of Earth's solar system, from pure air back to pure air, then on to another solar system to experience its evolutionary cycle. This continues forever, as new solar systems are constantly being formed as old ones disappear into black holes and are reborn again. The whole path of progress, the whole picture, would blow the circuits of most people on Earth. They are not ready for it and do not have a need for most of this information, as it will not further their progress in this incarnation. The Old Testament had the truth as its foundation for the tales. It was not deliberately tampered with, except for the parts about spaceships. The writings about the early visits of space people that had been recorded were changed during this time, towards the end of it, as the people rewriting the early books thought that whoever had written them was obviously out of his mind. As far as they were concerned, there were no such things as had been written about spaceships. The feeling that was prevalent at the time of this rewriting was that they were all made up in order to make a better story. But the New Testament did have the most important points deleted from it through the years. Some were deliberately deleted, others through translation problems. The deliberate ones were done simply because someone in authority at the time simply couldn't fathom certain ideas, such as reincarnation, for one. This material was deleted from the Bible when it was first determined that the people would behave better if they didn't know about reincarnation. It was thought to be for their own good. In other words, even though it was done deliberately, it wasn't done maliciously, but misguidedly. The men who first perpetrated this act had no idea of the far-reaching consequences of their deed of denying humanity the right to know of reincarnation. This was probably the single most far-reaching crime ever perpetrated on humanity, and these men will be paying for eons for this. Who were they? The first ones were Catholic priests in the days before the Reformation, a group of men in a monastery in Rome that took it on themselves to change history. Martin Luther had the opportunity to put this information back in, but chose instead to leave it out. He is just as guilty as the others. There have been more that could have restored the truth, but as time passed, the opportunities to do so came less and less frequently. The basic fact of reincarnation is a truth which can be, and eventually will be, proven scientifically. Science will soon make a discovery that will prove reincarnation once and for all on a scientific level. Then humanity will be unable to refute it any longer. It will have to do with atomic matter and the fact that there is a limited amount available for use in any given universe. When this discovery is made, reincarnation will be the first spiritual fact found able to be proven by science.